What we really liked was making the audience laugh when they didn't want to.
Please note that the percentages in these pie graphs do not add up to 100% because the math was done by a woman.
And then the audience semi-laughs and semi-boos, and then Norm goes.
For those of you hissing at that joke, it should be noted that that joke was written by a woman. So now you don't know what the hell to do, do you?
Uh-huh. And then they laugh at that, and then he goes.
No, I'm just kidding. We don't hire women.
I want to give a quick shout out to two people who, in my opinion, are the unsung heroes of the Norm Macdonald story. Two people that meant a lot to Norm and were really there for him in pivotal moments. One is Jim Downey, who, for my money, the best, pound for pound, the best comedy mind that I've ever encountered. Head writer at Sound Out Live for many years, wrote for David Letterman, just an absolutely brilliant man. I worked for him at Sound Out Live, and he was the one that really worked with Norm on Update, and for that just incredibly classic period of Weekend Update at Sound Out Live. So a shout out to Jim Downey, and I'm thinking about him because Norm so loved him and admired him.
We wanted it to be like a punk segment, sort of like what The Clash was doing in the 70s, where it was just very bare bones and no cuteness.
So it wasn't a studio crowd-pleasing effect. It was never aimed at the studio audience. It was always aimed just directly at me. What I knew was funny.
Don didn't want Norm doing Update anymore. I wanted to stop raining, I mean, I didn't take it as any more than that.
It pretended to believe that it was going to be an enormously popular decision for which the public would thank them. And in fact, the unanimity of the TV critics was something to see. I remember Time magazine had a thing about it and even printed up a little postcard to send to NBC to dump on them.
The smartest cat I ever knew at SNL, and a much revered figure there, is joining us for another segment. This is my former producer, longtime writer and contributor, Jim Downey. Jim, I had Norm on the show yesterday. I always thought Norm, from the first second I saw him, was just a flat-out misanthropic genius. I always gave him a wide berth as far as time schedules and that, because I just said, well, I'm going to grab Amadeus and tell him he has to be here to do busy work. You know what I mean? That isn't going to happen. So I think he's a genius. What was it like to work with him on Update?
Well, he is a genius and the most fearless performer. He likes people to laugh at his stuff. He enjoys that, but it's sort of one of like, half a dozen important aspects of what he does. Mm-hmm. So that if he really loves a joke or a bit, he will happily go out there and do it, whatever the response is. And there is if you want to hear a story,
I love me a Norm story.
One time we were in the office doing Update stuff, and there'd been a news item about there was going to be a newspaper for the homeless, and so we were thinking about doing some of that. So we started improvising. It was more of a scene, not something we could do on the segment, but it was like a tough kind of Perry White kind of editor going like, "You, Miller, I want 500 words on going to the bathroom in your pants. You, Immel, give me something. Give me a human interest thing on Berenstain Bears. You, was that kind of thing. Yeah. And like a lot of like photos, maybe some, a little human side, what are, pets, that kind of thing. And so nothing came of it, and I sort of forgot we had the conversation. And then the first meeting we have after the summer, Norm comes in and goes, hey, Downey, remember that, that thing we were talking about there with the, remember that thing with the newspaper for the homeless, that thing, the homeless newspaper? And I go, yeah. He goes, yeah, well, I was out in L.A. and I was asked to do this benefit, for the coalition to feed the homeless or something, And, and I'm going, no. And he goes, yeah, I did that bit, They hated it. Hated it.
All right, you tell me now. That's the Andy Kaufman part of the joke, or is he actually surprised that they hated it? That's what I can't quite figure with. Look,
I know.
Jimmy calls in here periodically and says that he has bought a puppet and he wants to work material out on the show. And I'll say, well, tell me about the puppet. And it's an old man puppet who's a Holocaust denier. And it's obviously just Norm sitting at home talking as Norm. He makes no pretension to a puppet voice.
I know.
And I think he's Andy. I don't know. I view a lot of Andy Kaufman in there. It's just
Well, he also would like to. One of the things that he would really enjoy just getting into a character, and then you could not get him out of it. Like he liked doing old man stuff.
Yes.
Like being an old geezer and complaining about aches and pains and stuff like that. And then you go, okay, Norm, now seriously, now we actually have to talk about it. He'd start doing stuff about rheumatism and things like that. And you just had to plead with him to just stop. But he was on his own kind of set of rhythms.
The speed with which he would take his sport coat off at the end of his Letterman impression always I would watch the thing just to watch, because Letterman's so ill at ease with show business, always makes this conscious show of getting rid of the sport coat at the end of the show. And when Norm picked up on that and did that as impression, God, I fell out. Hey, I have to ask you about the real Andy Kaufman real quickly. What were you hip to him before he comes in, or what's
well,
that? Well,
I had not. He had been on a couple of times the first season, and I had missed most of the first season, so I didn't really get to meet him until year 2. But he, there was one time I was flying back from visiting my family in the Midwest, and I arrive at Newark airport, okay, at like midnight because the flight was delayed, and I don't know why, but in those days I guess it was too cheap or something, but I decided to take the bus into the Port Authority, and I get on the bus, and there's a solitary figure in the back in a brown hoodie, and it was Andy Kaufman. So we went back to that was where we sort of bonded on that bus trip from Newark Airport. So he used to come by the office and ask if anyone wanted to go see kung fu movies in Times Square. That was when Times Square had virtually nothing but kung fu movies.
Right.
And so I went a couple times with Mr. Kaufman, and he was like just a fascinating person to be around. He quite he loved those movies and could discuss them like a completely normal person. But when he wanted to get into his thing, he was as unshakable as Norm,
Yeah. Folks, I know that SNL over the last 35 years has become the cultural place where young people hang their hat. And if it does you any good in a world where people seem to get misappropriated power or misappropriated wealth, to know that the finest man I ever met there was right at the center of it for over 3 decades should do all our hearts well. Jimbo, I love you.
Love you right back.
All right. We'll talk at you down the road. That is the great Jim.
Feelings flowing up and down, picking up the pieces that you left behind, hitting a new type of flow, breathing in the smoke and clearing up my mind. The thoughts of you, I never knew what the hell you got me into.
I do. I think that men are much more interested as generally speaking, in comedy, and it's the norm is more guys trying to make girls laugh than the reverse, right? So I mean, I think that's why men tend to predominate in comedy. But there's always plenty of openings for.
Who is a great
really
woman writer? Name 5 great women writers on Saturday Night Live.
I would say right now we have Paula Pell, who's great. We have.
Hey, you want to take a call from Joel?
Wait a minute,
in Kansas
you're telling
City?
me.
No, I don't want to embarrass you. You're having trouble getting past 1.
I'm not. Norm, you cut me off when I was naming my favorite women writers. I didn't get to say Emily Spivey, who's there right now, who's a genius.
You're just naming people that are
Pam
on this.
Norris. Huh? No, Pam Norris was a writer like 20 years ago.
Okay, keep going. That's 3. Okay, go.
Rosie Schuster.
Yeah.
I'm just
That's 4.
Tina Fey is a great writer, but I think of her now as a performer. But she's a very good writer.
Well, that's 5.
That's
you did
5.
it, Jim. You did it. You did it.
Oh, I could go on and on.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, let's do 10 then.
Let's because then I'm just going to piss off people I don't name.
All right, Jim. We'll
what I
take a
think.
break and we'll let you collect your thoughts. Who is the funniest guy ever on Saturday Night Live?
Man, I'd prefer to say that there's like a group of like 10 people who it's hard to find because it's
Is it Paula Pell or?
well, she's not a performer on the show, but
No, but I mean just in the room. No.
Oh, you mean the fun? Well, I always thought that Norm, you were one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. Certainly.
No,
I
I'm
can't
talking
think of.
Bill Murray?
Someone like David Spade is hilarious.
He's unbelievably funny, but I meant, yeah, he's probably the funniest guy in real life. But I'm saying as a sketch performer.
As a sketch performer, I mean, the list would, and I don't know how to pick from among it, but it would have to include Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Eddie Murphy, Dana Carvey, Will Ferrell. I think there's
So you
a
didn't
lot
like Belushi then?
Well, I wouldn't put John at the first tier. That's all I'm saying. I'd put him like second team.
Because just like
Because
one
otherwise this first team's going to have way too many guys, and they won't get playing time, and they'll be unhappy.
That's interesting. You didn't mention a woman.
Oh, I thought you said the funniest guys. I was going to say the women next.
I said the funniest performers.
Okay, well, see, I hate women. You got it out of me. Still, I think that also I'd say the women we have now. I mean, I don't know how you'd pick among I should say Maya Rudolph and Amy Poehler and Kristen Wiig. I mean,
I think you'd choose Gilda Radner, wouldn't you?
Well, I love Gilda Radner, and I think she was really funny. Okay, she's on the first team. She made the first team.
Sweet, Jim.
But and then I better think of the ones I knew. Well, Jan Hooks was great. You know.
Yeah. Okay, we know you like girls.